Dear friend, have you ever looked at an aging parent, a beloved grandparent, or an old friend and quietly wondered, could this be our last year together? Maybe it was the way their eyes lost a bit of sparkle, the way their voice softened over time, or how their hugs once strong and familiar have grown lighter, looser. These small changes, though subtle, may be gentle signs that they are entering the final stretch of their human journey. Welcome to Lotus of Dharma, a space where we contemplate life's most delicate truths through the lens of Buddhist wisdom, so we may find peace even in what feels unthinkable. If something in these words resonates with your heart, I invite you to stay. Watch until the end. Leave a comment if you feel called. And please consider subscribing, because today, you may discover how to say goodbye not with fear or regret, but with compassion, stillness, and love. When the body begins to let go, unexplained weight loss as a silent signal of return. Life does not depart with noise. It does not shout its farewell, nor does it storm out of the body it once animated. No, it retreats with grace, subtly, gently. A pair of trousers now too loose at the waist. A meal left untouched, not out of defiance, but simply because the appetite has faded like the evening light across the quiet temple courtyard. These are not accidents of aging, but whispers from the body that it is beginning its return to the great flow of nature. In the Dhamma, we are taught that the body is not who we are. It is but a temporary vehicle, a raft, as the Buddha called it, carrying us across the vast and often stormy river of samsara. And when the far shore comes into view, the raft no longer needs to be polished or reinforced. It has served its sacred purpose. Let it be. Many families, out of love and attachment, struggle when they see their elders eat less. Eat a little more, they plead. Just one more spoonful. But compassion is not always action, it is often presence. It is the warm silence of sitting beside a loved one, offering them a bowl of kanji not as a demand, but as a gesture of love. It is understanding that, in the final seasons of life, food nourishes not just the body, but the heart, and sometimes, that nourishment comes more from company than calories. I remember well an old monk from a rural monastery. Each day, he would drink nothing more than a small cup of tea and eat a single banana. His skin grew thin like rice paper, his robes hung from his shoulders like mist clinging to the mountaintop. Yet never did he speak of death. He simply smiled deeply, peacefully, as if the body, once heavy with the weight of the world, was becoming lighter and lighter, preparing the soul to rise. This is not something to mourn, dear one. It is something to behold. In the teachings, we are reminded again and again that suffering arises not from change, but from resistance to it. The body withers, yes, but it is not a defeat. It is a transformation, a sacred unraveling. The leaves do not scream as they fall from the tree, they simply let go, and the world becomes beautiful with their falling. So when you witness your parent, your teacher, your friend growing thinner, do not panic. Do not rush to fix. Do not force. Instead, be still with them. Let your love not be measured by how much you can feed their body, but by how gently you can hold their spirit. Sit close. Listen to the silence between their words. Offer not urgency, but warmth. This is the practice of metta, the loving kindness that does not grasp, but simply is. Understand this, the body knows long before we do. It begins its descent like the sun, calmly, faithfully, without fear. And just as the sun does not mourn its own setting, the body does not fear its own fading. It is our minds that tremble, not the nature of life itself. Let us learn, then, from the banana left half eaten, the robe hanging looser, the breath that pauses longer than before. These are not warnings, they are invitations. To love more tenderly. To speak less and mean more. To be present not with worry, but with reverence. And when the moment comes, may we not cling to what is vanishing, but open ourselves to what remains, the grace of love, the quiet dignity of letting go, and the timeless truth that what is born must one day return. The flickering flame of fatigue beyond repair. Fatigue, when it arises in the final chapters of life, is often misunderstood. We tend to associate exhaustion with illness, with weakness, with something that must be treated or reversed. But from the perspective of the Dhamma, this weariness is not always a wound, it can be a whisper of completion. It is not a collapse, but a soft landing. There comes a time when the body no longer wishes to hurry. The muscles do not ache to lift, the legs do not yearn to roam. This is not failure, it is fulfillment. Just as the moon does not rush to shine at dawn, the body does not cling to vitality once it has served its purpose. The spirit within knows, I have traveled far enough. Now I seek stillness. And so, instead of urging our elders to rise, to walk, to act, we must learn to sit beside them, as they are. Let them be still. Let them find peace in simply being. There is a sacredness in the quiet afternoon sun falling upon their face. There is presence, not in movement, but in the steady breath, the open gaze, the hand resting gently upon a lap. I once met a woman who had tended her garden for over 5 decades. Every flower bore her care, every root remembered her touch. But in her final year, her hands could no longer dig, her back could no longer bend. Her children, out of love, encouraged her daily, come, let's walk to the roses. You'll feel better. But she simply smiled and sat on her wooden bench, watching the petals sway in the breeze. I don't need to tend the garden anymore, she said softly. The garden now tends to me. We must understand that joy does not always come from doing. In the later seasons of life, joy often comes from being allowed to rest with dignity, without pressure. This is what it means to honor the rhythm of impermanence. Like a candle whose flame dances lower, not out of loss, but out of grace, the body withdraws its energy from the outer world and turns inward. This slowness is sacred. The Buddha taught that all compounded things are subject to decline. The body is no exception. But the decline is not something to resist, it is something to accompany. And if we are wise, we will walk this gentle descent hand in hand, not dragging those we love towards some imagined vitality, but resting with them in the beauty of surrender. Let us not say, why don't you get up and try? Let us say, may I sit with you a while? Let us not lament their silence. Let us listen with our hearts. Let us not fear their stillness. Let us trust it is exactly where they need to be. When we sit beside someone in their final weariness, we do not need to offer answers. We offer presence. A hand, a smile, a bowl of warm tea. This is the practice of karuna, compassion, not driven by fixing, but by flowing. Like a stream that does not push the rock out of the way, but flows gently around it, embracing it. And when you see that your loved one can no longer do what they once did, do not mourn who they were. Rejoice in who they still are. A living soul. A sacred flame. A leaf ready to fall, not out of despair, but because its time has come. The gift we give, then, is not motivation but permission. Permission to slow down. Permission to be carried. Permission to lay down their burdens and simply breathe. For in the stillness of the final fatigue, something beautiful stirs freedom. The freedom not to strive anymore. The freedom to rest. The freedom to return. And what greater love is there than to walk beside someone as they make their return, not as a rescuer, not as a fixer, but simply as a companion of the soul. When the mind begins to drift, confusion and withdrawal as a passage between worlds, there may come a time when your loved one looks at you and calls you by a name you've never worn. The name of a sister long gone, a childhood friend, a mother they lost as a child. Their eyes, once clear and rooted in the present, now drift like lotus petals on a river, touched by memories, carried by winds you cannot see. They speak of places you've never been, of moments that seem stitched from dreams. Or they fall silent, gazing at something just beyond the curtain, beyond the wall, beyond the veil. And you wonder, where have they gone? But this, dear one, is not madness. It is not a mistake. It is the beginning of a sacred departure. In Buddhist teaching, consciousness is not bound to the present. As the body begins to loosen its ties to this life, the mind too begins to move freely between realms, between lifetimes, between the shores of memory and the sea of what comes next. It is like the moonlight reflected in many waters appearing different, yet never truly gone. We suffer when we demand they stay with us in our version of time, our version of reality. But what if, instead of pulling them back, we walked with them for a while, even if the road seems unfamiliar? There is no need to correct. No need to remind them of what is. Let go of the urge to enter them in this moment. Instead, anchor your heart in patience, in compassion, in stillness. I once sat with an old abbot in his final days. He had taught countless monks, written verses that dance with clarity and silence. But toward the end, he began to forget. He would look at me and see another monk from decades before. One night, as I placed a blanket over him, he whispered a name of his teacher long returned to dust. "You're here," he said, eyes wet. "I've waited so long." I said nothing. I did not tell him who I was. I simply bowed my head and held his hand. In that moment, we were both exactly where we needed to be. He later told me in a quiet breath, "This is not confusion. It is memory arriving to guide me home." And I understood. From a Buddhist view, this gentle drifting of the mind is not a loss, it is a preparation. A loosening of identity. A releasing of form. The ego, which once clung tightly to labels and stories, now begins to unravel, and with it, the spirit finds room to breathe. So, when your loved one confuses the present with the past, do not grieve for who they were, love them for who they are in this very unfolding moment. If they speak nonsense, listen anyway. If they speak nothing, sit with them anyway. Be the steady candle that does not demand recognition, but simply offers light. This is the practice of deep mindfulness, to be there not for what you get, but for what you give. To love not for how someone makes you feel, but simply because they are. Remember, just because they no longer speak clearly, does not mean they are gone. Just because they no longer remember your name, does not mean they have forgotten love. And when they fall silent, completely silent, do not rush to fill the space. Sometimes the soul speaks loudest when the mouth is still. Let us then sit beside the quiet river of their mind, watching it drift not with fear, but with reverence. Let us be the gentle companion at the edge of the shore, watching as their boat begins to cross to the other side. No longer trying to hold them back, but blessing their journey onward, in peace. When the body ceases to resist, lingering illness and the slow healing of a life releasing, there comes a season when the body no longer rushes to repair itself. A small cut that once closed in days now lingers, dark and tender. A simple cough becomes the quiet companion that refuses to leave. The warmth of the body flickers like a candle in a light wind fading, not because it has lost its will, but because it no longer needs to hold on. This is not failure. This is not defeat. This is the body bowing gracefully, silently before the law of impermanence. In our modern view, we are taught to fight. Fight the fever, fight the fatigue, fight every sign of aging as though death were a trespasser, not a natural guest. But in the Dharma, we learn a different truth. Not everything that declines must be resisted. Some things are meant to pass. And in that passing, there is beauty, there is wisdom, there is peace. The body is composed of the four great elements: earth, water, fire, and air. And as it prepares to return, each element begins its quiet release. The warmth of fire fades from the skin. The moisture of water leaves the lips dry. The salinity of earth softens in the bones. The air, the breath, begins to move more gently, like wind through the leaves at dusk. This is not a crisis. This is a return. As the wave recedes back into the ocean, so too does the body dissolve into the vastness from which it came. I once visited an old fisherman named Tenzin, whose body had begun to slow. The cold pierced his joints like needles. Small infections stayed longer than they used to. His family brought him soups, ointments, remedies, but none of it changed what was happening. He smiled at me with weathered lips and said, "Do you see the tide, Venerable? It never clings to the shore. It returns when it is time. We must learn from the tide. Our role is not to stop the inevitable, but to walk alongside it with kindness. Keep them warm. Cover their feet. Moisturize their hands. Speak gently. Sit close. Sometimes, the greatest healing does not come from pills or procedures but from presence. There is a quiet dignity in a body that no longer fights. It says, I have given. I have served. I have carried the soul far. Now I will rest. And for us, who watch with trembling hearts, it is not easy. We want one more treatment, one more cure, one more chance to delay what we are not ready to face. But we must ask ourselves, are we doing this for them, or for us? In Buddhism, compassion is not control, it is acceptance. It is the wisdom to say, I am here, not to prevent your journey, but to make your path softer. So when the body begins to slow, let it slow. When wounds linger, let them linger without shame. When colds stay, let them stay without fear. Tend to the body as you would tend to a sacred shrine, gently, reverently. But know this, the shrine is only the shell. The spirit is already beginning to move. May we honor this quiet unraveling not with panic, but with peace. Not with resistance, but with loving surrender. And when the time comes, may we hold not just their hand but their heart, trusting that every unraveling is simply the beginning of a new weaving, somewhere beyond this world. The final breath, the sacred shift in the rhythm of breathing. There comes a time when the breath begins to fade, not abruptly, not violently, but like mist dissolving into early morning light. It grows thin, quiet, unhurried. You might notice pauses between each inhale and exhale, longer now, softer. The hands feel cool to the touch. The feet, too. And yet, if you look closely, the face holds no struggle, no fear, only a deep, mysterious calm. It is in these final moments that we see the greatest paradox of life. What seems like an ending is in fact a return. The breath is not ceasing, it is surrendering. The body is not failing, it is simply releasing its hold, returning to the rhythm from which it came. In the teachings of the Buddha, breath is not just biology, it is the thread that holds together this life and the next. We are born with an inhale. We die with an exhale. Everything in between is just the flowing tide of air, never owned, never stocked, only borrowed. When the breath becomes irregular, when it dances slowly towards stillness, it is not an emergency to fix, it is a transformation to honor. There is no need to speak in those moments. No need to try and fill the silence with words that grasp or cling. What matters most now is presence. To sit beside them. To match their breath. To let your own heart become a soft drum, gently beating beside theirs. I remember an old nun who had spent her life in quiet service. When her final breath approached, her family panicked. Do we call the doctor? Do we do something? Her granddaughter whispered in fear. But the nun, with almost no strength left, smiled faintly and said, just breathe with me. And so they did. Together. Wordlessly. Peacefully. Until her breath slipped into stillness. Not lost. Not broken. Just returned like a wave flowing home to the sea. This is what it means to accompany someone into death. Not to resist it. Not to hold them back. But to walk with them, lovingly, right to the threshold and bow as they step through. When the final breath comes, when the body no longer rises and falls beneath the covers, let your sorrow be softened by reverence. This is not the flame going out. It is the light returning to its source. Just as the moon disappears beyond the horizon not to vanish, but to shine elsewhere, so too does the soul move beyond what eyes can see. Just as the tide recedes not to end, but to rise again in another part of the world, so too does consciousness continue its journey, unburdened by form, free of pain. Sit with them. Hold their hand, even if it's cold. Speak, or say nothing. Let your love be felt through your presence alone. Let your silence speak. You are safe. You are loved. You can go now. Do not call it death. Call it a homecoming. Call it the moment the body rests and the spirit rises, not as a ghost, not as a story, but as pure, spacious being. In the Dhamma, we are reminded again and again, nothing truly ends. Everything returns. Everything transforms. And so, let there be no fear in that final exhale. Only gratitude. For the breaths shared. For the memories left behind. For the chance to be witness to such a sacred departure. In the end, love is not measured by how tightly we hold on, but by how gently we let go. And if we can learn to do this, if we can be still, be soft, and be present, and when our own time comes, we too will know the last breath is not a loss. It is a beginning, a liberation, a letting go that leads us not into darkness, but into boundless light. So, dear one, if these reflections have touched even a quiet corner of your heart, then take a breath with me now. Let this not be something you merely watched, but something you carry. Carry it into the next moment you sit with your aging parent. Carry it when you notice the slight trembling in their hands, the slower pace of their walk, the gentle way they drift into silence. Carry it when you feel helpless, unsure of what to do. Because sometimes, to love is not to act but to be still. To be there. To breathe alongside them with no expectation, no fixing, no fear. Cherish these quiet signs not as warnings of loss, but as openings. A looser belt. A shorter sentence. A longer nap. These are the gentle preparations of a soul readying for return. Just as the tide pulls back before nightfall, the body too begins to release, not because it is broken, but because it is wise. It knows when its journey nears completion. It does not scream. It does not resist. It simply lets go gracefully, like a leaf riding the wind. And you, the witness, the companion, your role is not to hold them tightly, but to hold them gently. Let your presence be the softest place for them to land. Let your hands bring warmth when the world grows cold. Let your silence speak of love that does not need words. This life is sacred not because it lasts forever, but because it doesn't. And it is in this passing that every breath becomes more valuable, every smile more radiant, every touch more holy. So please, do not rush through your days. Do not wait until it is too late to say the things that matter. Be present now. Forgive now. Sit beside someone now. Because in the end, what remains is not how long we lived, but how deeply we love, especially in the quiet, in the slowness, in the letting go. And when the time comes for you to say goodbye, not with fear, but with trembling tenderness, may you remember, you did not lose them. You walked them home. Life is not measured by the number of days we live, but by the depth of our presence in each fleeting moment. When someone we love is nearing the end of their path, they do not need miracles. They do not need us to hold time back. What they need is a hand that does not tremble, a presence that does not run away, a voice that whispers softly, not "please stay," but "I am here." To love is not to cling. To love is to let go with grace, with peace, with trust in the natural unfolding of all things. It is not easy, but it is sacred. So if this reflection has brought even a small measure of calm to your heart, if it has helped you see a loved one's fading not as a tragedy but as a sacred return, then I invite you to pause. Leave a comment. Share this moment with someone who may need it. And if you wish to continue walking this mindful path with us, one breath at a time, please subscribe. Together, we honor this life not by holding on tightly, but by walking each step with presence, with compassion, and with a quiet understanding that every breath, every goodbye, is part of the beautiful, impermanent dance of being human.